Someone like to make a motion to return the regular board meeting to public session, please? Dr. Venator, thank you. Second. Mrs. Van Cise, thank you. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. I would like to call the regular board meeting to order. All board members are present except for Mr. Mecca. Since this is the last meeting for retiring board member Mrs. Vasquez, would you like to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be advised that in the event of a fire emergency, an evacuation should be necessary. An alarm will sound. Please note all the marked emergency exits and evacuate well away from the building. At this time, we request that everyone turn their cell phones and or their other electronic devices to mute or silent, please. Would someone like to make a motion to reorder the agenda, place the personnel tenure approvals after the approval of the minutes, and add a recess after the tenure approvals, to hold a reception honoring the retiring board members and the newly tenured staff members, add an addendum to the personnel consent agenda, and add a second executive session and approve the agenda as amended, please? Dr. Venator, thank you. Second. Mrs. Beeger, is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Dr. Mimesloff, do we have any recognitions this evening?
We do. Thank you, Mr. LeMay. Outstanding educational leaders are the hallmark of our school district, and I am proud to introduce one of our school administrators who was recognized last month by the School Administrators Association of New York State. East High Principal Tony Scanzuzzo was named the 2018 High School Principal of the Year for St. E's Region 12. Mr. Scanzuzzo joined East as an assistant principal in 2009 and was named principal in February 2016. Before Williamsville, he worked as an assistant principal at Frontier High School and as a business teacher in Lancaster. Mr. Scanzuzzo is a highly engaged educator with a welcoming, student-focused approach to school leadership. Please join me in congratulating him on receiving this prestigious award.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Board of Education for taking the time to recognize me as the 2018 St. E's Region 12 High School Principal of the Year. This achievement is humbling, yet special, because an award like this does not happen without a supporting cast of teammates. There's so many people who have played an integral role in creating opportunities for East High School community to shine. Thank you to the Board of Education for supporting programs that allow our staff to take learning to new levels and challenging our students. I want to thank Dr. Martzloff for having faith in me and offering me the position to lead a great school and community. Not only are our programs second to none, but our facilities are the envy of so many other districts. Thank you for that. Our achievements are too numerous to mention, but the impact of positive school climate and culture, coupled with our dedicated faculty, staff, which includes our secretaries, custodians, aides, and monitors, and supportive community and amazing students, create a perfect recipe for success. I want to thank the district administrative team of Dr. Sierri, Dr. Balin, Dr. McKenna, and Mr. Matursky for their continued guidance and support, along with dear friends of mine, Gary Colicchio, Keith Boardman, North and South High School principals, and all the building leaders who are a simple phone call away at any time. They're always there to help and assist whenever possible with a student-centered vision and focus. Individual personalities are never a concern, and that's special. It's always positive, and being part of our administrative team is what I'm most proud of, and I share this honor and recognition with all of you. Thank you.
We also have a very special recognition tonight, celebrating Williamsville's Unified Basketball Team and their Section 6 championship. This is the first year the district participated in the program, and to win the regional championship is truly something extraordinary. We are happy to have some of the team members and their families with us tonight to honor this achievement. I would like to introduce Dr. Anna Sierra, Assistant Superintendent for Exceptional Education Student Services, and Mr. Chris Muchica, Instructional Specialist for Physical Education, Health, and Athletics, who will tell us more about the program and introduce us to some very special guests.
Thank you, Dr. Martzloff. We are so thrilled and excited to have our athletes and partners here with us tonight to celebrate their exciting achievement and their win this year. I'm just going to give a little bit of background information and then turn it over to Mr. Muchica to introduce our team and our coach. Since 2013, Special Olympics New York and the New York State Public High School Health Athletic Association have offered Unified Champion Schools programming through interscholastic unified sports and inclusive youth leadership clubs to NISFA member schools. Over 100 high schools across 8 sections currently offer interscholastic united sports and inclusive youth programming. Over 1,500 students, and this was before we started, and some other schools jumped on, so that number is, I'm sure, I know, is higher. Over 1,500 students play unified sports, and over 1,200 students participate in inclusive youth leadership clubs. When Mr. Muchica and I first heard about this opportunity, we were thrilled to kind of research and participate in the initial meeting to find out a little bit more about it. And Mr. Muchica took me to one of his meetings to learn a little bit more. That was definitely eye-opening. So I'd like to turn it over to him to acknowledge and recognize all those that participated.
Thank you, Dr. Siri. When you get into education and become an administrator, you really think about moments like we experienced the last couple months with our unified basketball team. Kids that are in the sports for the correct reasons, kids that show passion, commitment, dedication, and a thrill for competing and playing. And I hit on the word sportsmanship because if you were at any of our games this year, it was amazing to watch our children compete against other schools, really compete at a high level, score baskets, achieve, but yet have a sense of partnership and ownership of what they were doing in their actions and responsibilities. It was so much fun to be at the games. If you were at any of the games, the first game of the year started out a little bit slow. We were down in the first half, but the kids kept fighting, kept clawing away, and by the end of the game, it was almost like a Disney Hollywood ending. We were down 8 points, we were down 6 points, we were down 4 points, down 2 points, and with about 10 seconds to go, we stole the ball, hit a 3-point shot to tie the game and send it to overtime. And I remember looking at Dr. Siri like, I can't believe this is happening. And we ended up losing that game in overtime, but it kind of set the tone for what we were about to get involved with. And after the game, the hugs and the collaboration between teams and coaches was truly amazing. Pan forward 6, 7, 8, 10 games down the road, we found ourselves down 16 points in the championship game against Cheektowaga, and the event was held at Lancaster High School. And we chipped away again, 16 points down to 12, 10. You get the picture, down to 2. Tied the game under a minute to go, stole the ball with about 10 seconds to go, and won the game at the buzzer. So it was truly amazing. And what's amazing about this is the kids got better each and every game. And they gained and grew in trust for each other, love of each other, and respect for their coach. And I'm going to bring up Dan Greiner now, and he can kind of walk up as I'm talking. When we interviewed Dan, and he was interviewing us, Dr. Siri and I knew that we had the perfect fit for what we wanted to do because you can run a unified program, and a unified program promotes social inclusion through sport, but if you don't have the right leader, it's never going to work. Well, we hit a home run with our leader and Coach Greiner, and moving forward, we're in it for life now for unified basketball. We're looking to go into unified bowling, and I want to also thank the board, Dr. Martzloff, and our leadership team for having a vision. And if you're ever having a bad day in the future, look up the Unified schedule, come to a game. You can't help but smile. We experienced all emotions, Anna and I, in the first game. We laughed, we cried, and it was really, truly amazing. So if you get a moment and want to feel good about life, come to a Unified sport. Coach Greiner, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us here this evening, and thank you for supporting Unified Sports. Mr. Muchika and Anna came to me, Dr. Sierra came to me in early March and brought this idea, and I was coaching another sport, or planning to coach another sport in the spring, and he said, just mull it over and think about it. And I did, and after looking up videos on YouTube and finding out what it was all about, I said I was in, and it's been the best decision in 25 years of teaching and coaching. And I think Mr. Muchika touched on that. Watching these kids, the joy in their faces, win, lose, sometimes losing, they want to win, absolutely, but making a basket, making a good pass, dribbling down the court, halftime. Our halftimes were probably the most fun part of this year. Sweet Caroline at Williamsville North became a tradition that I think will carry on. I'm a Red Sox fan, so I'm sure we're going to try to keep that going. And some of the other schools had dance parties at halftime, so we could have played half the basketball game and then just quit there with halftime and been happy. But to win this game at the end, it really isn't about winning and losing in this. Just being part of it is, I think, a win for everyone. And the whole idea of bringing kids together, one of the things that I didn't share was the day after our victory, I got called down to what I thought was just a little party for some of the athletes who were from North. We also had 2 athletes and a partner from South. Mr. LeMay's daughter was an integral part of our team as one of our partners. But so they had a small party for the athletes at North, and I came down and I thought maybe there'd be a little cake or cupcakes or something like that. The whole hallway was lined with students from regular classes, pulled out. They had made a banner for the kids and had the kids run through it, and just a look on their faces, looking at Blake and some of the other guys was just unbelievable, and that was what it was all about. And we're sure that North next year is the Williamsville team is going to be supported by all 3 schools in really great fashion next year, because now they've seen what it's all about, and I've already got people coming up to me saying that, how do I get involved and how can I be part of this? So thank you for doing all of this. So I'd like to call up the members of the team who are here, and so they can get their recognition. James Bessing, Dave Bulin. Come on up, guys. They're shy sometimes too. Blake Calvers. One of our partners who's an exchange student from Brazil, Luis Honorio. Ken Jackson. Alex Kohut. The big man, Marcus Romanowski. Kylie Rosen. Jack Rowland. And Tyler Young. I'd be remiss if I didn't quickly recognize some of the other athletes and partners who aren't here tonight. Aiden Hilstein, Maddie LeMay, Nicholas Massaro, Jacob Stives, and Claire Syracuse. I can't say enough about the athletes and partners and how well they work together. I'm sure it's an experience that's changed their lives, and I think they're going to continue to do great things. Luckily, I have Kylie back next year as a partner, and most of the athletes are back next year. We're going to lose our senior partners here, but it really is the start of something great, and can't wait for bowling. So, thank you. While we're getting ready for the picture, I'm sorry, just one more thing. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize the building principals and vice principals who helped us. They really found kids to participate in this. So without them, this also wouldn't have happened. So thank you.
I'll let the parents come on up too, because I know you all want pictures.
Up you go.
Is that chair in the way?
Be on the front.
Ready, everybody? 1, 2, 3. The hot line's better. Do one more. Awesome. My daughter was telling me all that.
Then mom and dad.
Oh, they're high-fiving them.
Thank you very much. Great go.
I have to say, with the camaraderie and the compassion that these players played with, it was very opening. I have to agree with the sentiment made earlier that if you're having a bad day, come to one of their basketball games. You'll guaranteed to leave with a smile on your face. I was fortunate to make it to 5 or 6 of them, and I've got to tell you, I've never seen players play like this. You know, the very first game, the highlight that I'll never forget is literally one of our players stole the ball from one of the other team's players, and she was upset by it. And this player stopped, turned around, handed the ball back to her so she could take the shot. I don't see that anywhere. So excellent job, and commend all of you for a great season. So thank you again. Okay, moving on. It's with a saddened heart that we have to say farewell to a board member this evening. Mrs. Tony Vasquez has been on the board here for the past 6 years. She's done an excellent job. I've thought of her in numerous different ways. I tried to put some words to what I've thought of her and how her performance has been. And the things I keep coming up with was things like she was fearless. She was always strong. She was confident. She was never afraid to be the minority voice or the minority opinion on any subject matter if she felt it was right. And it's going to be a loss for us to lose. Unfortunately, Tony could not be here tonight. Her twin sister is here in her place. But I've got to say, we really are going to miss you, Tony. And I thank you for the 6 years that you've given this board.
you for the gift. Thank you. It's heavy chocolate.
Solid.
First and foremost, thank you so much, President LeMay, Dr. Marshloff, fellow board members. Thank you for allowing me to be part of this board for the past 6 years. Thank you for listening to my final speech at this table. And of course, I'm going to quote Martin Luther King because that's what I do, you know that. But, you know, there's a story behind that, too, because Martin Luther King reminds me of my dad. And my dad's no longer here, so I listen to Martin Luther King, I watch his videos, and it reminds me of things that my dad would say, how he would say it, his inflection. Of course, there's no more elegant speaker than Martin Luther King, but my dad was pretty good at it, too. During Martin Luther King Jr.'s final speech, he said, "If I were standing at the beginning of time with the possibility of taking a general and panoramic view of the whole human history up to now, and the Almighty said to me, 'Martin Luther King, which age would you like to live in?' He said, I would take my mental flight by Egypt, and I will watch God's children in their magnificent trek from the dark dungeons of Egypt toward the promised land, and in spite of its magnificence, I wouldn't stop there." He went on to say, "I would move on by Greece and take my mind to Mount Olympus, and I would see Plato and Aristotle and Socrates and Euripides and Aristophanes assembled around the Parthenon as they discussed the great and eternal issues of reality, but I wouldn't stop there." He continued again, "I would even go by the way that the man for whom I am named and watch Martin Luther as he tacked his 95 Theses on the door of the Church of Wittenberg, but I wouldn't stop there. I would come up to even 1863 and watch a vacillating president by the name of Abraham Lincoln finally come to the conclusion that he had to sign the Emancipation Proclamation. But I wouldn't stop there. Strangely enough, I would turn to the Almighty," he says, and he would say to him, "If you allow me to live just a few years in the second half of the 20th century, I would be happy." Although a lot less dramatic, there was also an influential part of my story that has resonated volumes into who I am today. One of those things happened in November 2008. Our country was teetering, some with reverence, others with trepidations about the possibility of electing our first African-American president. I, of course, was in complete awe. I told the people in my life that I prayed to God to allow me to live and see this happen, and then I would be happy. As it turned out, I was more than happy. I was inspired to run for political office. Since 2008, I have been on an election ballot 7 times. 7 times on an election ballot. The majority of the time, I lost the election. Although losing is disappointing, it never discouraged me. I have been proud of all of my races because I remained true to my convictions, I maintained my dignity, and I added diversity to all of my campaigns. I moved into the Waynesville School District in 1993. I sought out a good neighborhood to live in and raise our children. I am a law-abiding citizen. I pay taxes. I am extremely philanthropic. I am involved. I can be silent and judicious, or I can be very outspoken. I have made profound sacrifices to serve communities that look like me and communities that do not. Now I charge all of you to maintain your dignity and increase diversity. One way to do that is to become more diverse, not only in your individual composition. I do not expect that you can change your DNA, but I do expect that you can be diverse in your thought and in your exercise of best practice. The mission of the Waynesville Central School District states that we are a community characterized by diversity, high expectations, and support for learning. Our mission is to empower all students to develop their unique potential and character, to assume responsibilities of citizenship and leadership, and to thrive in a challenging and rapidly changing global community. According to our mission, we at Waynesville believe that our highest priority is our students. I am, and I have always been, student-focused. I have always advocated for and supported all children in the district, including my own, and I make no apologies for advocacy. Contrary to some recent expressed opinion, I am a mom first and foremost. Not only a mom to my children, but also a nurturer and advocate and supporter of all of your children. I tried tirelessly during my tenure to be true to our mission statement while being a reliable steward to the fiduciary responsibilities associated with board obligations. Malcolm X said, "I am for truth, no matter who tells it. I am for justice, no matter who it is for or against. I am a human being, first and foremost, and as such, I am for whoever and whatever benefits humanity as a whole." Because I am the first and only African American ever elected to this board, I have a unique perspective. Fitting in while standing up and speaking out is difficult. With my departure, the board now lacks any diversity, and so does its workforce. In 20 years of consecutive parenting in this district, only one of my 4 children has ever had a black teacher, and that was only once. Today, there are 0 black teachers in our district. That isolation index adds to our district's disproportionality. When people lack meaningful, substantive engagement with persons that look different from them, microaggressions, fear, and biases become the lexicon of choice. Research suggests, and according to Stanford's the Equality of Opportunity Project, boys raised in America, even in the wealthiest of families and living in some of the most well-to-do neighborhoods like Williamsville, still earned less in adulthood than white boys with similar background. According to that study, income inequality between blacks and whites is driven entirely by what is happening among these boys and the men that they become, starting in kindergarten. If this inequality cannot be explained by individual or household traits, much of what matters probably lies outside the home, in surrounding neighborhoods, in the educational system, in the economy, and in this society that views black boys differently from white boys and even from black girls. All this matters to me because I have black children, both boys and girls, and it just happens that I am more rich than I am poor. So one would surmise that the path of success for my children is fortified in concrete, but it is not. Disproportionality is a problem because it rationalizes an overrepresentation of discipline, suspension, expulsions, and special ed referrals. More deeply, it prevents children from reaching their academic potential, fuels negative stereotypes, results in a type of racial profiling, and results in lowered expectations among teachers, parents, and most importantly, among the students themselves. The Quain Institute suggests that implicit bias is implicated in every aspect of racial and ethnic inequality and injustice, and that in each of us, implicit bias contributes to the development of unconscious hierarchy of caring that influences who we care about and what groups of individuals are beyond our caring and in place of invisibility or disposability. We have adults who still treat our black and brown children like they don't belong here, and they treat parents like we are all the same. One misstep by one of us is not a reflection of his or her own individual actions. Instead, it is a reflection of our entire race and community. This us versus them is pervasive. So what to do? President LeMay, what to do, board? What are our next steps? Barack Obama said, change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. Do the right thing. Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any board acknowledgements this evening? Dr. Benader?
Thank you, Mr. LeMay. I have 2 acknowledgements. First, I'd like to express my personal congratulations to Principal Anthony Scazuzzo at Williamsville East. As the Board of Education liaison to Williamsville East, I've had the pleasure of working with him throughout the course of the last year, and I've been thoroughly impressed with his leadership, his vision for the school, and his ability to build a culture of team at the school. On a personal note, as a proud graduate of Williamsville East, it warms my heart to know that the vision and the future of the school is in his hands. So congratulations. I'd also like to recognize a wonderful chorus concert that occurred at Transit Middle School, where I have a sixth grader, this past month. Fifth and sixth graders, if you were not there in attendance, it was an amazing event. And again, on a personal note, as a former musician, I certainly appreciated it, but what really touched my heart was when my mother, who had taught music in Buffalo for over 30 years, pulled me aside at the end and said that was likely the best sixth grade concert she's ever heard in her life. And so I shared that with the administrators at Transit Middle, and I just wanted to recognize that. Clearly, we are doing an amazing job when it comes to the arts, and I would like to see us continue to do so in Williamsville. So thank you.
Are there any other board acknowledgements? Okay, Mrs. Beeger, would you please read the board's public expression statement?
Sure. Welcome to all who have come to observe this regular board meeting. Per Policy 1510, the board has set aside 30 minutes for public expression, a time when we invite members of the community to share ideas and concerns with us. We welcome this opportunity to hear from you. Each person is given up to 3 minutes in which to address the board. You will be signaled with a yellow flag at 2.5 minutes so you can conclude your remarks. This is a meeting held in public rather than a public meeting, which means we will not be engaging in dialogue with members of the community this evening. But rest assured, we are listening carefully and we take seriously what you have to say. Thank you for your cooperation. And we have no names on our public expression list for this evening, for our first public expression. Was there anyone that was interested in speaking at the microphone? Okay, thank you very much.
Someone like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda and personnel addendum as presented. Mrs. Vasquez, is there a second? Mrs. Van Cise, is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. I would like to thank the following retirees for the service to the district. Ellen Huesner, teacher aide at Maple West Elementary for 17 years of service. Judith Mollison, the teacher aide from Country Parkway Elementary for 24 years of service. Catherine Pirusik, I hope I got that right, the Director of Continuing and Community Education for 17 years of service. Robert Rathel, a painter in Lawrence Bell Business Development for 32 years of service. And Frida Zecker-Trop, the Senior Clerk Typist in Business Development for 4 years of service. Thank you. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting held on May the 22nd, 2018? Mrs. Beeger, thank you. Is there a second? Dr. Venator, thank you. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Okay, all in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the tenure recommendations as presented? Mrs. Beeger, is there a second? Mrs. Van Cise, is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Dr. Martzloff?
Yes, I would just like to take a moment to congratulate those of you who are here this evening that have been awarded tenure by the Board of Education. It's certainly a milestone in your career and a terrific testament to what outstanding educators all of you have been here in Williamsville, and I am sure will continue to be for many, many years. So congratulations on a noteworthy achievement, and at this time I certainly invite you to the podium if you'd like to say a few words.
Hi, I'm Charlie Smillish, the principal at Dodge. I'm not getting tenure. However, I have two amazing individuals that are getting tenure. One is Lori Bellicos, a kindergarten teacher who worked in Niagara Wheatfield for several years prior to coming to Williamsville my first year. She's a tremendous addition, an absolute superstar. And I also have Mallory McManus, a TESOL teacher. I always confuse the letters sometimes, and she's an absolute dynamite as well, working in several different grades, helping our children each and every day, and they'd like to say a couple words. So congratulations, ladies.
Good evening. I just want to say thank you to the Board of Education for this opportunity. I love working in Williamsville. I love working at Dodge. Some of my colleagues came out today, and I'm excited to continue my career at Dodge at the most dynamic school on the planet. Thank you. I'd like to thank Dr. Martzloff and the board and my principal, Charlie Smilnich, and I am super excited to be at Dodge. Thank you.
Thank you to Dr. Martzloff. Thank you for being the type of leader that no matter the concern or need, that I can always pick up the phone and reach out to you and ask for your assistance or add for your guidance. You have been critical in my development as a leader, and I thank you for the opportunity. To Dr. Balin, Dr. Sierra, Dr. McKenna, Mr. Matursky, thank you so much for all your support. I could not imagine a more knowledgeable group of people to work with. To the faculty and staff at Country Parkway, I am so grateful for their hard work and dedication. I left Country Parkway about 6:15 to come here, and my third grade team was very eager and anxiously working to get ready for next year and planning and just the enthusiasm that they all display each and every single day. It's just a simple testament of the hard work they all put in. To the parents at Country Parkway, thank you for your support of your sons and daughters. You send your students to school each and every day ready to learn, and I appreciate your partnership. Thank you to the students at Country Parkway, both past, present, and future. It's all about you. You take risks in learning. You have fun in the process. You're open to instruction. Lastly, thank you to the Board of Education. Thank you for your vote of tenure. While tenure is by no means an end goal, it does provide an opportunity to pause and to reflect on where we've come, where are we going, and how can we get better. What I pledge to you is to always be self-reflective, always strive to do better each day, to keep our students first. Again, thank you for this high honor. It is such an awesome responsibility and a great privilege being the leader of Country Parkway.
Good evening. I'd like to congratulate Megan Schatt, who's a special education teacher in my building, who does an amazing job, who originally was with Williamsville at one point in time, took a hiatus to raise her kids, and now she's back, and she's granted tenure, and she's an invaluable part of our team, and I'd like to introduce her to say a few words.
Well, he stole my thunder. Most people cannot boast about being a Williamsville tenured teacher once, but today I can say that I'm a Williamsville tenured teacher twice, and I'm so thrilled to be here. As he said, as Mr. Scanzuso said, I was gone for about 15 years, but I was never far from the district. I have 3 children. My last one is about to graduate from Williamsville East, so I have been around for a long time. I know what a special place Williamsville is. I know it as a parent. I know it from the inside as a teacher. So I thank you. I am thrilled to be back, and I am just so happy to be at Williamsville East and here with you. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we'd like to take a recess and celebrate both the retired board member and as well as our newly tenured staff members here. So we'll take probably a 15-20 minute recess. We invite everybody to the back here to cut cake and have dessert. I'd like to reconvene the regular board meeting at this time, please. Moving on, we've got the Erie County Association of School Board, the annual dinner. Mr. LeMay, myself, Mr. McClary, Dr. McClary, I'm sorry, I can't read the names here. I need glasses tonight. Yeah, I know. I'm soon. Glasses very soon. So myself, Dr. McClary, and Mr. Mecca attended the annual dinner on June the 7th. Dr. McClary, would you like to add anything to it? I know I filed a report on our behalf, but
I would like to just state that at the Erie County dinner, which was an awards presentation, that our own board president, Mr. LeMay, I know he didn't want to have this known, but did receive an achievement award for his active involvement with the Erie County Association of School Boards. And I think that's indicative of what we see in him in all of our board activities. So congratulations. Enough away you can't.
I was going to say, yeah, I didn't know I could blush, but thank you. The newly elected board member, Eric Borenstein, has attended the Erie County School Board's mandated new school board member training on June the 9th. He is still required to take the final FORT training sometime later this year. We have the Western New York Educational Law Conference coming up on August the 1st, 2018 at the Millennium Hotel in Cheektowaga, New York. Currently, I have down Dr. McClary and myself as attending. Is there anybody else that would like to attend?
Wait,
Okay.
excuse me. That's the one on August 1st?
August the 1st, yep.
The maybe for me.
That was a maybe for you. Okay, I will
Because of-
change that to a maybe.
Because of the possibility of the other conference that hasn't.
You could bring up that conference.
I don't-
I bring it up here in a moment.
Okay, go ahead.
I said I would attend that as well.
Okay. I will put Mrs. Zeiss down. Is there anybody else who would like to attend that conference? So 2 yeses and a possible maybe. I'll check again next month. I know it's a little early, but I know with the summer months it's good to plan these things ahead before family vacations and all that. So Dr. McClary, I have, does anyone else like to report anything under the Erie County Association of School Boards? If you'd like, maybe you could bring up that other matter. I don't know the details of it, but if you'd like to attend, I'm sure the board here would be more than sufficient to approve it.
I did not bring the material. That was.
Sometime in July. I don't have it handy either. How about you bring it up and we can approve it for you for next month?
Okay. It's a similar law conference that's it's not an Erie County one, it's a NISBA one.
Okay.
That's why I was confused.
My apologies then. Okay, so it's under NISBA.
Yes.
I remember they had, no, I can't even remember. I don't remember. I remember seeing it though. So we'll bring it up for next month. Anything else under Erie County Association of School Boards? Moving on to the New York State School Board Association. Tuesday, June the 26th, Delaware Mansion from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. will be the complimentary member reception. I have down Mrs. Beeger, Mrs. Leatherbarrow, Dr. McClary, Mr. Meyer, and myself. I know we'd love to look to the leadership team too if anybody else would like to join us on that event. It's open to everybody.
Yeah, that's a possibility. We're going to discuss it later this week.
Okay.
Okay.
That would be great. Anybody else on the board here that we missed that would like to attend?
What time was that at?
6 p.m. to 8 p.m. I do have you down already.
I'm putting it in my.
Oh, okay. The 99th Annual New York State School Board Association Convention will be held in New York City on Thursday, October the 25th through Saturday, October the 27th. We will formally approve this at next month's meeting, but so far I have Dr. McClary, Mr. Mecca, Mrs. Beeger, Mrs. Leatherbarrow, Mr. Borenstein, and myself all interested in attending. If anyone else would like to attend, please let us know as soon as possible, as travel plans and arrangements are going to have to be worked out.
I thought I emailed a reply on both of those, that I said I would go to the August 1st one as well as the NISBA one. I just have to make sure for the weekend. It could be my daughter's sectional games as well as a wedding. So I would love to go and I hope to go and I pray, not that she's not going to make it to sectionals, but if there's too many conflicts, I'll have to refrain.
As travel plans have to be booked, you'll have to probably think that one through sooner.
Once I find out the wedding.
Okay. Anybody else have anything else to share under New York State School Board Association? Dr. Martzloff.
Thank you, Mr. LeMay. In addition to his recognition from the Erie County Association of School Board members, Mr. LeMay has also been recognized by the New York State School Boards Association. Members qualify for recognition points by participating in school board developmental activities such as New Member Academy, Board Officers Academy, the annual convention, legal conferences, regional workshops, or district-level custom improvement programs. And I want to announce this evening publicly that Mr. LeMay has been recognized by the New York State School Boards Association for achieving the Board Achievement Award. So congratulations, Mr. LeMay, and this is for you.
I thank you all. I don't do this for awards or glamour or for sort of, any recognition at all. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's see here. So we've all received the board goals year-end report and summary. I had it printed out and given to you today. This is the results as they were given to me that I compiled for you. This is not the results that were in your board packet. I believe that was a summary of last year's, maybe with a little tweaks here and there. But this here real quickly is just a quick glimpse at the goals as they were for the board. You'll see for the most part, we achieved a lot of our goals. We missed some of them. Some of them we missed, closely. I'm looking at some of the things like the school visits. We mostly achieved these, our goals that we set. Some of the technology goals, I think we've done some excellent strides there in making headway and some new things. And just because of the way the calendar sits, we haven't successfully finished our goals on that. However, as soon as the calendar flips over to July, will have, because we'll be implementing board docs starting in July. So, that'll really take some good things moving forward there. So I'll let you guys review this. Is anybody want to comment on any of this? If not, you can review it in your own time, and we'll use this as a guideline for setting goals here in August. We'll start looking at setting the new board goals and improving on them. Okay. Something new this year, though, that I asked us to take a look at was doing the board self-evaluation. I think for everybody who submitted this, did this for us, this is the first time we've ever done this, to my knowledge. I apologize, it was kind of a late thing. We kind of squeezed it in there to quickly get it done. I don't want to necessarily go through this in depth, but I did want to bring it up and review it. Mostly here to kind of go over, where we are. What you see up here on the screen right now is a summary of all the board's answers. So I haven't itemized everybody's answers, but what I've put up here is a summary, compiled data here of how everybody answered it. And this is, I think you also have a copy of this that was printed out and you can take a look at and review. For the most part, I think we've done some great, for our first ever evaluation, I think we've made some good strides here. There's certainly some areas that we can look at for improvement. Do I have to turn this on? Probably. Oh, thank you.
Technology.
I know, you're my technology guru here. Thank you. You'll see for the most part, I think that, for vision, leadership, and accountability, we're mostly effective to highly effective. The board conducts a self-evaluation to monitor its own performance. Well, we're developing because this is the first time we've ever done this. So I'm happy to see that we're developing because technically we were ineffective in all years prior. So this is a good first step. Board governance and policies. I'd love to show you the raw data because I don't think this necessarily correctly reflects everything because of rounding and stuff like that. But I think you'll see that we've taken some major strides here in that, we've got some good policies in place and whatnot. I think this is going to help us to formulate our goals for next year when we come back in August. We're going to take some of this feedback. So I'm going to encourage you to please take this and go home, review this, look at how the board answered, and see if we can turn some of this into board goals for when we come back together in August. I did put a note here on the third standard, communication and community relations. You'll see that we had 3 highly effectives and 2 effectives, but if you'll notice that the rating for the standard comes out to be effective, I did put a small little note there and just say it's because of rounding. We actually come in at a 2.6, which effectively rounds us up to effective. So that's why overall, though, we're effective in this category. Fiscal resources and staff recruitment, again, we're highly effective overall. And finally, the ethical leadership. Now, the last one that comes up here, the board has adopted an annual reaffirms its code of ethics. This is a big question mark. This is the one that we had answers all over the place. Some of us answered ineffective, some of us answered highly effective. So the question here is what is our code of ethics as a board, and where is it? Does anybody have that answer?
Isn't that what we approved at the September or August?
A board code of ethics?
I don't believe it's called that, but I believe it's the same thing. It's the work of the board and
there's policies.
Board policies?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I wanted to highlight that because that was the big question mark. So I guess that's probably something that we can look at, again, come August timeframe to look at and see how we can improve on that. But any comments or questions on the board's first self-evaluation?
I thought this was an excellent tool. I'd like to use it moving forward.
I thank the New York State School Board Association for this tool. They're the ones that developed it, and I don't know how much of the rest of the packet you've read. I know it's been distributed to board members over the years, I think annually over the years. So it's got a wealth of good information and kind of helps derive to where we should set our goals come August. And I know that was an area that we struggled last August with. So, yes.
I noticed that it had that board goals function to it, which we didn't start with, but I think using this year-round would be great because it would give us more accessible place to access those goals and then reflect on them towards the end of the year. So when we get to that goal setting, I think using this to start would be great.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely plan on bringing this tool specifically back up, but the back half of this packet also had how to set board goals and stuff like that, and I haven't properly given it enough attention to evaluate it compared to how we currently do, but I gotta think it's going to help us be more strategic in our goal setting. So it's definitely a tool that I'm planning on looking at for the future for us. Any other comments? Yes, Ms. Van Cise.
I think if we are going to use this, we definitely have to do the second part because it does talk about SMART goals. And one thing that I found very difficult when asked for how to measure or to comment and see where we were with our goals, they're not measurable. So we have to align that much better.
I think we've heard, I'm trying to think of where I've made these comments before. I know I brought it up several times of us trying to work and figure out better goals. It's a topic that I've brought up a couple times with Dr. Martzloff and Mrs. Leatherbarrow, as well as to maybe that can be the topic of a retreat that we do in the future. Of course, come October, when we typically do our retreat, we've already set our goals, but I think it still might behoove us to take a look at something like that, at least somewhere down in our schedule to try and educate ourselves better on how to make more tangible and accountable goals, something we can put our finger on specifically and say, yes, we hit this, no, we didn't, and this is why. Thank you for all the feedback. Dr. Martzloff, would you like to give us your community update, please?
Thank you, Mr. LeMay. First of all, wanted to update the board and the community that we are conducting safety audits, security audits at all of our schools in conjunction with Amherst Police Department, as well as through a private provider who is a national security expert who is reviewing the processes and procedures at all of our schools and is reporting back to the leadership team and to the principals to help us target different areas for growth and improvement to make our schools as secure as they possibly can be. So for the board, there will be a number of items we will be updating both short-term and long-term in the coming months, and we will share those as we can. We do have to be careful about sharing them publicly, as we do need to maintain confidentiality due to the sensitive nature of the subject matter. I also want to congratulate the class of 2018, who will be graduating here shortly at East, North, and South, and we are unfortunately reminded of what happens during this season. Sometimes there was a tragic accident of a Hilton Central School District on the west side of Rochester who was killed in a car accident within the last few days. And so it's just really important that we all as parents and community members remind our children to be safe. and to make sure they're doing what they need to do to be as safe as possible so that we don't have tragedies during this time of the year. And then lastly, I do want to take an opportunity publicly to thank Tony Vasquez for her excellent boardsmanship over the years. We haven't always seen eye to eye, dating back a few years, but in the last couple of years, I've grown to know Mrs. Vasquez a lot better, and I'm really struck by her honesty, her ability and willingness to advocate for students, for teachers, for administrators. And the biggest thing I've found about Tony is her sense of fairness. She's a very fair person from what I've experienced over the 6 years. So I'm proud to not just call her a board colleague, but also call her a friend. I wish her the best of luck in whatever the next thing she decides to do, whether it be run for some other kind of office or be an advocate for children or for adults or whatever the case may be. And we're just very thankful for her leadership over the years. Thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you, Dr. Marsloff.
Bless you. Dr. Marsloff, I'm going to turn it back over to you for the district-wide survey results.
Thank you again, Mr. LeMay. I would like to share the results of some survey information that we were able to obtain from our community and our parents over a period in January when it was collected. This could have and would have been shared with the board much sooner, but we had a lot of discussions around school safety and security due to some things that happened in the country. We had to adopt our budget. We had a lot of items taking place, but I did want to share this publicly with the board so you can get a sense of what it was. And we partnered with a company called Thought Exchange. And so this community survey will give you an idea of the project overview, understanding the top thoughts, how it is they dig deeper, and what our potential next steps might be. So the 2-week survey took place from January 3rd, right after the December break, until January 17th of 2018. The participants were 480 parents, 260 students, 108 staff members, 16 community members, and 2 other. And I don't know what the other is, but at any rate, that was our list of participants. And what happens is people put their thoughts in and respond to the questions, which I'll get to momentarily, and then people get to go back into the system and sort of rate each person's thoughts. Like, is that something that really resonated with you as well? And if so, you'd rate it highly. If it wasn't, then you'd rate it not so highly or not at all. And so some of the top thoughts that came out I'm going to share with the board this evening. So all the people shared their thoughts, and then the ratings took place based on these 2 questions. Number 1, what are the most important things for the district to focus on as we plan for the future? This wasn't about criticizing district operations or our budget process or whatever the case may be. This was to try to come up with areas of focus and things we should think about very carefully as we plan in the future, based on what sometimes is a rather silent majority who might not speak out publicly, but might have a lot of in-depth thoughts based on their experience as a parent, student, or a staff member or a taxpayer. The second question is, what are some important experiences you would like your child to have at Williamsville Central Schools to support their continued growth and success? So in other words, what's going really well, and you want to make sure we as a district continue to focus on that. So with these 2 questions, we had some different categories that came up. Number 1, student support and engagement. And the first one was support all learners, and this was a top priority in question 1. It had the most agreement from students, 4.2 stars, and parents, 4.0, and staff, 3.8. So that the 4.2 stars is how A particular response is rated. So being that his 4.2 is rated highly by students, parents, and staff alike. And what they sort of meant by this is having every student valued and supported regardless of their abilities is something participants would like the district to focus on in the future. The next one was class size is a top priority in question 1. However, parents prioritize class size to a greater extent than students. And if you look at the difference, 4.1 to 3.4. So it's almost appears as though students are saying, yeah, our class size is pretty good, but parents are saying, you know what, it could be lower, let's make it lower. So it's sort of intuitive in much of the research on class size that having a reduced class size would be a better thing. So they would like that so that, of course, students receive more individual attention. In the area of student engagement, that was also a top priority in question 1 and had highest agreement amongst the 3 groups. And participants would like students to feel engaged in school. That's an interesting word, engaged. Understand the context of courses and want less emphasis on testing, something that comes up in school districts all across New York State every spring when we talk about the 3 through 8 testing and parents perhaps deciding to make a decision for their child to refuse the tests and things of that nature. And one of the quotes is an example thought as a holistic and 21st century learning, increase STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math, increase experiential, free play, and active learning, balance technology with people skills, teach empathy and mindfulness, increase critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, empathy, emotional regulations to prepare students for their roles as citizens. That's really preparing a human being for his or her future in a nutshell, I think. Looking at school culture, character development was top priority in question 1 and 2 and had a high degree of agreement for parents with students and staff, but low agreement in question 2. Participants would like to focus on developing students with strong social, emotional, and leadership skills through experiences such as volunteering. A lot of times in Williamsville, we do a fabulous job of having events where we raise money for a lot of different causes all across Western New York. I think the idea here was, well, what about actually volunteering and showing up and being part of an event or planning an event and making it happen? The next one was safety and behavior, a top priority in question 1. And 2 main conversations that took place were better monitoring and enforcement of the drug policy / vaping at schools and creating a safe environment for students. How do we create and maintain the safest environment possible for all of our students and staff? In learning and life skills, experiential learning was a top priority in question 2. However, there was not a high degree of agreement between staff, parents, and students. And some of these items included things like internships, job shadowing, and field trips. And then the next one was future careers. And participants would like students to be prepared for their future by having guidance opportunities to explore careers. Now, we already do this to a large degree with our school counselors, but they talked about having a more active, hands-on guiding opportunity with school counselors while students go through particularly high school so that they can make the best choice possible for their college career. In learning and life skills itself was one, and make sure students are learning about basic life skills like budgeting, credit cards, filling out paperwork, emphasis on financial life skills. Certainly the board heard that at our presentation last month from our business department, how important those skills are for our students. And then course offerings. This was interesting to me because it was a top priority in question 2, and the idea of a focus on coding and technology. And in Williamsville, we have Project Lead the Way through a partnership with the Rochester Institute of Technology for a number of years. We offer it at all 3 high schools. But we, as a leadership team, have called into question a number of times, should this continue at all 3 high schools, because the enrollment is just not as robust as we'd like to see it be. So we hope to see more students enrolling in those course opportunities in the future. So next steps is working with the results. identify questions and topics for further exploration, find overarching connections, plan and prioritize our action steps, and then consider a follow-up exchange with our school community. What are some follow-up questions or things we'd like to ask our school community in terms of what we should prioritize as a school district as we plan for the future? And a lot of that sort of depends on where does the district wish to go next year when it comes to potentially coming up with a long-term strategic plan for our goals for our students. So this was the end, and happy to answer any questions or provide any clarification.
Anyone?
Yeah,
Mr. Meyer?
real quick, Scott, one of the items in the slides was regarding instruction with respect to creating a budget, credit cards, finances, loans. Do we offer anything like that right now?
We do, and that's the personal finance course and some of the other courses through the business department that were presented at our last meeting that focus on some of those skills in those areas.
Other board questions? Dr. Martzoff, what do you project our timelines for the next step to be?
Well, I think it would make sense as we do our goal-setting process to have a sort of a general idea from the board as where they would like to see this potentially go next. And if people are comfortable with that and sharing that, let us know, and we'll begin to plan and prioritize and present some ideas back to the board, most likely at the August board meeting.
Okay, thank you. How about moving on to the next presentation, please, Dr. Martzoff, the survey results for the Language Other Than English program, or LOTE.
Thank you, Mr. LeMay. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Balin. Her and I have met a couple of times to review the presentation and what the feedback has been from our parents. So, Dr. Balin, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Dr. Martzoff. Good evening. As you can see from the first slide, really this will be an overview of the survey. I will share with you several aspects of the survey itself, as well as some of our considerations for next steps. So to give you a sense of the scope of this, in March, we sent a survey to all of our parents and guardians, and we were very pleased to receive 1,195 responses. As you are aware, just like with our other surveys, they are sent to unique Witsmail addresses, but it could be also possible for more than one member of a household to respond. Just something to keep in mind as we move forward. As far as the purpose of the survey, and we did reflect this in a couple of paragraphs that were shared along with the survey questions, the context for requesting the information. One facet of this included, as we always want to be very reflective about our instruction and our programming, but the purpose of this particular survey was to ascertain the interest from parents and guardians in exploring options for and potential enhancements to our LOTE program. It was shared with parents and guardians, as we've done before. It's not always possible to honor every suggestion made, but the input is critical because part of what we do in our process is always to gather feedback and perspectives, and anything is shared is considered along with any other information, best practices, and research to plan for any considerations moving forward. It's also important to keep in mind this is one body of important information. At the end, we're going to talk about some next steps that we're planning to take. So gathering feedback from other stakeholders, consulting the research on this topic, gathering any additional needed information, and exploring feasible and meaningful options are really what is necessary and really integral to components of making such important decisions such as this one. So with regard to the construct, the types of questions that we included in the survey were both direct questions with responses from which to choose, as well as some open-ended questions for parents and guardians. In the open-ended questions, I will note that this also included an opportunity for parents and guardians to offer comments. Before we examine the survey questions and results, the slide here before you provides our current district program. As you can see, we have programming at both the middle and high school levels. They are offered across all schools in the district at grades 5 through 8. You can see it's broken down even furthermore with grade 5 and then the span of 6 through 8 there to show you the minutes of instruction currently for our classes. We offer both French and Spanish, and at high school, French and Spanish continue, and German and Latin are added as 2 other options. One question that we tend to get on what seems to be a fairly regular basis is about German. And actually some of the comments in the survey also reflected this in that, is there really access to that particular language? It tends to run at North, but it's important to remember and recall that we do include it in all 3 of our course catalogs. It just happens to be that for several years, really North has been the one that has been able to sustain and offer that. As with our high school courses, enrollment is always a factor in courses that are running. So on to the survey questions. First, parents were asked to identify the grade level bands, K through 4, 5 through 8, and 9 through 12 for their children or child at the schools of attendance. On the screen here, you see a breakdown, and in your slides, you see a breakdown by percentage of the responding schools and where that lies. I'm happy to report we did get parents from across the district to respond, and you actually see the amount and percentage listed there before you just as a reference. This question, again, looking at the big picture first, we asked parents to rate on a continuum with 4 categories: very important, somewhat important, not important, and no opinion, really with regard to their feeling about the expansion of the LOPE program and the level of importance to them. The 2 highest categories were very important and somewhat important. This represented approximately 88.8% of survey respondents. The slide here reflects the preferred grade level where language instruction should begin from the perspective of parents. As you can see, we listed all grade levels, K through 8. Kindergarten received the highest percentage with 38.7, followed by grade 5 with 25%. We did provide a context for this question, and the survey did include information for parents on our district program beginning at grade 5. As you are aware, the New York State Education Department, however, mandates instruction at grade 8, but recommends it at grade 7. And certainly there is also a body of research that indicates early language learning. This slide represents the preferences with respect to what language would be offered at elementary. Survey respondents indicated Spanish as their preferred language, with 50.5%, followed by Mandarin Chinese at 24.6%. We actually directly cut and pasted from the survey the chart you see here because the selections that we offered appeared alphabetically as you see on the screen, so that's why it appears in the manner it does. From the same list, as a follow-up question in a grid or chart format, we also asked respondents to indicate their top 4 choices for grades 7 through 12. Again, we provided a context in that we offered the languages I talked about a few moments ago. This one's a little harder to put on a screen because it's actually formatted in several different fashions. So as a respondent, what you're essentially doing is you have the selections of languages on the screen and you're rating your first choice, second choice, third choice, and fourth choice. So you could actually read this from several different perspectives. You can look at the choices that are top 4 choices for someone's first choice. You could also look across all choices, top choice 1, top choice 2, top choice 3, and top choice 4. So for my own understanding, I actually tried to slice and dice this from both perspectives because I think looking at it across and looking through several different lenses is most important. What you see, regardless of the way that the data is examined, is the languages we currently offer, French and Spanish, were indicated in all of the parent selections. The 2 languages that appeared, though, as well were ASL, which is American Sign Language, as well as Mandarin Chinese. Latin also made an appearance when you looked at the top 3rd choice for parents. With an open-ended question, parents were also provided an opportunity to offer any other languages of interest to them. So essentially, you would type in, from no apparent selection, any language that was of interest to you as an individual. Approximately 40 different languages and dialects were mentioned. Some were inclusive of some of the languages on the list, but this was wide in variety. So some of the examples are ones that you've already seen, which is Mandarin. We also saw Japanese, Hindi, Russian, Korean, American Sign Language, Latin, Arabic, and Hebrew. Dr. Martzloff mentioned coding a few moments ago. There was actually some mention here and also in the comments of coding or Python or some of the computer languages. So this was taken, the scope was pretty wide here, so I'm very pleased that we did include an option for parents to offer comments and actually offer suggestions that were not from a prescribed list. So I think that gave us some insight into some other aspects. To offer additional information to us and to gauge interest in multiple languages and online learning, the following 2 questions were posed to parents. Do you support students learning or taking more than one language other than English? This received, as you can see, a very large affirmative response. And the other is because we've had lots of discussion, both with professionals, staff members in our own district, as well as students, about online courses and online learning. This has become a very popular vehicle when trying to acquire language from a more personal standpoint. There are lots of programs available that offer some type of support, and this one was also largely affirmative, but in the comment section, this also received comments that face-to-face is the preferred vehicle. So it's what was positive about using a direct question is you could also look at the comments and see what, if any, comments were geared to the questions that were in the survey and anything else that parents chose to highlight. And I'll actually go over some of the comments with you. But as we examine this information, as we look at the topic in its entirety, the following essential reflective questions really do need to be considered. First and foremost, what does this parent survey tell us? What themes emerge? From our analysis, importance was placed on the following, and this is coming from the direct questions as well as the comments from the parents and guardians, of which we've received approximately 260 in total. Acquisition of a second language is of great importance. This includes communication, understanding, careers, the needs both nationally and worldwide in a changing world. Early exposure is critical. The earlier that we expose students and instruct them in these items, the better. Quality instruction, talking about our current program, the type of instruction and the delivery of instruction are critical. Focus on culture, focus on communication, verbal and written, skills that go beyond just grammar. The ability for students to interact with one another are very important to our families. The global and cultural aspects, the personal benefits of learning about and interacting with various cultures and other individuals. These are the types of things that were highlighted as we looked across the information that was provided. There was quite a bit of mention across the comments with regard to American Sign Language. Very many comments spoke about how wonderful it would be to have something of this nature. The benefit of having this type of instruction for students, how it would be important, how it's inclusive, how it embraces all students. Latin and Chinese were mentioned again throughout the commentary, as were some other languages. One item we heard over and over again was actually not about the content of the survey, but just thankfulness for the survey. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the ability to provide feedback on such an important topic. It was overwhelmingly positive. There were some comments, however, that indicated that perhaps resources can be spent on other things, time can be spent on other things. From my indication, there were about 10 comments that indicated that sort of sentiment out of about 260. So we obviously, when we're looking at the totality of the information, we do have to consider that perspective as well. One of the key items moving forward, and one item that we have already had some discussion about, as Dr. Martzloff indicated, is what additional stakeholder feedback do we need to secure? This includes staff members, teachers, administrators, and what about the student voice? So those are the types of things that we are thinking about and working on right now. As far as benchmark data and other information, we actually have some information dating back to 2007. Actually looked at one of the first surveys we sent back then, 2009, 2013. We've been studying the topic for some time. There's research that has been done, information that has been gathered on this topic. Benchmarking remains, I think, a very important structure to be able to see programming and what programming looks like across like districts. This has often helped us when we're examining other topics, and similarly, it's our desire and our plan to do some benchmarking similarly. So the last bullet is really the culmination of all of these efforts and designed to take us to the next steps in the process. What are our options? So when we consider all of the information I just mentioned and the information yet to be gathered, in an effort to provide a recommendation and a plan, we really need to take all of the information in its totality. But I'm very grateful for the feedback from our parents and guardians. It's critical as we take our next steps, and as you can see here, we still have some efforts that need to be made to gather some additional data and take our next steps in the process. And with that, I'm very pleased to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions from board members? Mrs. Van Cise.
Thank you. That was very informative. Just wondering if you have information, I guess, or compared any other school districts and when they initiate their LOAT program.
Yes, we had done that actually in 2013. That was part of the research that we conducted. We're going to do it again. It varied. Some were earlier, some were later. Many of the private institutions, because it's also something that we looked at, start language learning far earlier than we do. And oftentimes that was something that was brought up to us, so we did not want to exclude private schools because we have a lot of private schools in our area. But it is our plan, actually myself and Karen Greco and Dr. Martzloff have had some conversations. We do need to update our benchmark information, so that is what we are in the process of doing right now.
And then just a comment that I would love to see, of course, LOAT, I think as many of us were, would agree with that it's beneficial, of course, to start it much earlier. I'm very happy we have it in 5th grade. I love that we were able to bring it back. I think that was an outstanding move because I do believe we exceed other districts in that area. So first thought that comes to mind is, we're going to have to look at even additional funding if we're able to implement LOAT at an earlier age, at an earlier grade. That's a concern. And then I know this is a parent survey, so I'm very interested in student interest because that is what at the elementary and middle school, they don't have really the choice. They will do essentially what we tell them. But we have to, of course, be cognizant about, and we had talked about maybe putting it in, the course booklet as an option, but we're driven also by that. Is there an interest to have multiple things, and then what students will actually sign up for before we look at complete, implementation of a course?
So if I may, I would like to offer a couple of things. One is, and part of my commentary around what's feasible includes the very considerations you're mentioning. It's programmatic, but certainly it's fiscal and there are other implications when program expansion is being considered. One of the things we need to look at is there a way to introduce another opportunity with not a great financial impact? One of those options might include even things after school. What are we offering there? I know a lot of other districts offer a wide breadth of opportunity for students after school hours. Certainly that's not the only option. One other opportunity might be another offering at the middle school level. So instead of 2 choices, you have 3 choices of languages. There are various ways to go about doing this. We do want to gather the perspective of students and staff members and administrators and really come up with what some of those options might look like, because I think those will reveal themselves. An inherent challenge in trying to offer a loan opportunity at the high school is if you don't have something preceding it, it becomes just that, it's a loan opportunity. So one of the things we try to consider is, what is that continuum? What does that look like? What comes before? What comes after? Because if you offer, for example, level 1 of a language, what about level 2? What about what comes before that? What about middle school programming? So you have to look at it in its totality. The other thing I know we all recognize is, and although we're not completely driven by this, we do have to recognize it, is the language requirement in terms of graduation. It's going to be a tough draw to put one class out there, and it's not going to meet the requirement. So in and of itself, that will be a deterrent for students. So while there may be interest and they may want to do something, if it's not packaged in a certain way, it will not help them to meet what they need to do in terms of their graduation. So, you know, we look at all of that when we're making a decision, because we certainly value and want to put in as many opportunities for students as we can. And thank you, because all of you have helped support so many of these types of things for kids. But we also want to make sure that it helps them be successful in whatever next steps they're taking. I had the opportunity with Mr. LeMay and Dr. McCleary to sit at the table with some great students who received honors for the SAT. I was actually told Dr. Martzloff I took an opportunity to pick the students' brains because they were sitting next to me. So there's great interest in doing some of the things we're describing. But one of the things they reminded me of time and time again is, what does it help us do after we leave here? Right? So one of the things we're going to try to answer for them and help partner with them on, that's why it's always important to hear that student voice, is how does it help me now? How does it help me when I take my next steps as a graduate from the Williamsville Central School District? So I think we will be able to answer that successfully. Thankfully, again, we don't look at things in isolation, but you know, there are a great many benefits to being able to offer what we do, and I'm very thankful that we do start in grade 5. You do know, of course, some time was lost there, so that is something we always think about as well. But any and all opportunities we can offer beyond what we have now, I know will be greatly appreciated. So I think we will be very thoughtful, very deliberate, very mindful of all of the considerations with any options we present, but there will be options, and some will be more feasible than others. Thank you.
Speaker.
Thank you for this report.
You're
I have a
welcome.
couple of questions based off of what you just said. When you mentioned the language requirements for graduation, what are those specifically? Is it a requirement about, like, do they specify the language or just the time? What is
What they specify is, if you start in a middle school, you're on a certain trajectory, and if you start a little bit later, you're on other trajectory. It's all driven by regulations. They don't tell you what language is. That's really a district decision. And if you were to canvass various districts in New York State, you would see some commonalities, but you would also see a lot of differences. Some start, you know, where we do. Some start later. You know, it's also important to keep in mind we have kids who come into us transferring from other places. So from that aspect, when we're looking at graduation requirements, we have to fall back on what the regulations call for, and those are very well articulated. It's actually its own document in and of itself, and it lives in the commissioner's regulations as well, and it actually tells us, if you start here, this is what you need to have. But we have a great program. You may know that those courses also lead to checkpoint exams. For lack of a better way of describing them, are Regents proxies. They do not offer Regents exams from a state perspective any longer, but those are stand-in Regents exams. So in essence, students have to pass courses, and they also have to pass the associated exams to earn the credit and move on. You also have students who pursue advanced diplomas, and for them there's yet another set of considerations. So that's why it becomes hard when you're looking at offering one class as an elective. Kids are going to be torn because they may have an interest, but it doesn't give them the continuum, because it has to be more than 1 year. And if you start with a language, you can switch at a certain point in time, but you have to have a few years of a consecutive language and the corresponding exam to get the credit. So that's why it's really, really critical when we're planning any programming that we consider these types of things when we're offering what we're offering, because we don't want to by default put students and their families in a position where they want to make a selection and they are interested in something, but it only takes them halfway to the goal that I just described. So we're going to have to be really, really planful in our approach to what it is that we offer.
Okay, can I follow up with that?
Oh, sure.
Sorry. You mentioned that there's also sometimes you're thinking of after-school opportunities. Are those opportunities ever able to be credit-bearing opportunities, or can credits towards graduation only be earned during?
No, those would be of a different variety of opportunity. We've also talked quite a bit. I don't know that we should rule them out either. It might be a complement to something, so maybe we could do both, but just on a very sort of taking one step at a time kind of basis. I do think we have to think long-term too, because again, part of what I'm attempting to articulate is that we have to look at it as a continuum. So if we're planning to offer something, it's really with the idea that something else follows it. And within that sort of packaged format that I was trying to describe, the after school would be, I think, right in line with some of the goals we've had over the past several years. One of our district goals has been to expand student opportunities. There's such interest in many of these languages. I mean, just looking at Hebrew, for example, or coding or some of the other things, it might be a real draw for students who maybe perhaps don't have that available with the Hebrew, for example, as a course, but would very much like to come together and have some instruction after school. So it's just really trying to think of a multitude of variety of ways to offer something that that could really capitalize on the interest that's here among our students and their families.
And thinking about interest, I want to ask specifically about Mandarin, because it's something that's come up repeatedly at community here. There's been several parents who have advocated and asked for Mandarin to be offered in our schools. And looking at the survey results, there's 3 languages we currently offer that are a really small percentage of what seems to be a preference for our parents. And Mandarin behind Spanish is really high in percentage as far as the preference. I realize we don't currently offer that, and I know that we need to plan as far as strands, but my question is, looking at these survey results and the input we've had from the community, what are our next steps as far as thinking about putting that as a course offering or doing some work to reflect what we're seeing here with these survey results around Mandarin?
I would say 2 things. Consistently showing in this were certainly Spanish was there. It was present whether you looked at elementary or 7 through 12. At elementary, K through 4, Mandarin did receive quite a bit of support at elementary. There was also support for it at 7 through 12, but that was also in addition to American Sign Language, which I would say received a fair amount of support, 7 through 12 as well. I think if we're looking at, again, instituting any additional opportunities, I think we first have to make sure we have the full complement of information. This is one source of information. I think it would be very early to draw any conclusions about programmatic decisions, because we still have other stakeholders, we have other information that we need to gather, and I believe we need to do our due diligence in having a full picture before any recommendations could be made. So I would go back to that last slide and say there's still a fair amount of work, a lot of efforts that still need to be made to give us that full picture. And just as Dr. Martzloff indicated with the prior survey, once you have the full breadth of information, then and only then really would I feel comfortable bringing to you and to our superintendent, to our leadership team, and working in conjunction with my colleagues to say, okay, we have all of this information at our disposal. What does all of it tell us? Because I think we have to have the full picture. Certainly this provides great insight to us. I think it's twofold. It provides insight that there's great support for our current programming. There's also great desire to expand and enhance what we have. And again, Mandarin is part of that desire, as is American Sign Language, because that came in as a strong showing, and to some degree Latin as well. I will be very interested to see how that, when you're looking at data, triangulates with all of the other information that we will be gathering, and also the research and the benchmarking component, because I think then we can come forth with here are some options to consider. It may very well be that there's more than one language option that we should be looking at. Again, what the question becomes is how do you do that in a responsible, manageable, and financially feasible way? And looking at it not just in the short term, but also looking at it in the extended or long term, because it's going to be a multi-step kind of implementation if this is something we wish to undertake, keeping that continuum piece in mind that I mentioned earlier. So we would be creating other difficulties if we were just simply putting out one standalone class or one standalone piece, because it would be disconnected, both from a requirement perspective, certainly, that I mentioned earlier, but from a programming perspective too, instructionally. So we have to wait to gather all of our information and do our work from there, make our recommendation from there.
Okay, thank you.
Other board questions? Mrs. Leatherborough.
Just a couple of questions. Thank you again for this.
You're welcome.
And the survey itself, was it available in other languages for parents to complete?
That's a great question. We didn't make it available in other languages. If we do get requests, and this could be for hard copy, it could be for translations, we would assist in making sure it was accessible. That's something that, no matter what we communicate, is a big piece of what we do. Ironically, we didn't have any requests for either of those things, but certainly if there was that need, we would do everything we could to meet it.
Okay, thank you. And my second point is just a comment, not really a question. I think it is important to point out that, for a long period of time, back even when I was in school, the foreign language choices were European languages.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think about what Ms. Vasquez spoke about so eloquently earlier, in that we need to consider the diversity aspect. And when you got that from the parents, but when you go back to your stakeholders, you're talking about other stakeholders, you're talking about employees, that diversity does not exist there currently, right? So I think that input from the parents for this area should carry a lot more weight than what we might get back from the employees, just because of the fact that we don't have the diversity here in our staff. I just would like to say I do support pursuing looking further into Mandarin as an option. I would support having it be on track beginning in middle school. Obviously, it's real easy to say you support something and not have a plan to implement it, but if we could come up with a plan, it would be wonderful, because that is something that we hear over and over again as a request, and I do believe there's benefits to offering languages other than just European languages. Thank you.
Other board members? Okay, I got a bunch of them. I did want to start by saying thank you for the results of the survey. I'm optimistic to see the results talking about early implementation. For those of you, most of the people on this board have known that I've kind of advocated since I first ran my first campaign 3 years ago for starting foreign languages as early as kindergarten. And I've never really had the answer as to how we would implement that, because I'm not a teacher, I'm not an educator by nature. I've always envisioned maybe we would do something along the lines of the Dora the Explorer approach, and just, it's a 5-minute quickie lesson, and we introduce something every day, and and it gets used beyond that. But I'm open to, any ideas that you guys come up with, because, you're the experts. One thing that I heard you note that oftentimes languages, and I think this holds true with a lot of classes in general, not just load, that we offer them at all of our high schools, for example, but only one high school, and oftentimes predominantly it seems to be North, but not always the case, gets the course being offered, yet our students at East and South lose out on that. I've got some personal experience with that with both my daughters, who have tried to get into various courses over the years that have been offered only to be said, class sizes aren't there. And the next year they do it again, class sizes aren't there. So in the end of their 4-year academic career, excuse me, they've not been able to take that course. So I want to kind of open up the idea and question to you of what could we do obviously offering the course at all 3 high schools may not be in the best interest. And I know last year we talked about class sizes, especially when it comes to in the high schools and stuff like that, and offering a course with 5 students, and it just doesn't make sense. But are there possibilities that we could look at, and I envision potentially, can we transport students from one school to the other so that they can attend the courses? What are your thoughts on that? And then I want to ask some follow-up questions based on that.
I think, let me start first with the programming. I love the idea of getting student feedback because I think they'll help us answer some of that question. Students, it's often said students vote with their feet. What that means is they will enroll in the classes they're most interested in. So I think if we strive to understand what they're wanting, what they're needing, what they desire to be a part of, I think interest grows from there. The transport becomes a challenge because they lose time coming and going, so it impacts their other classes. So while it's possible to potentially have them attend somewhere else, you're losing essentially a period before and after the said course. So I think for most students, they're not really willing to make that trade-off, so that's where it becomes a challenge. I'm very interested to brainstorm what possibilities there may be, because some of the heart of what I was explaining earlier really goes back to, are we truly hitting the needs of the kids? The kids that I sat with at that table that evening helped to open my eyes a little bit, because I think, and again, I'm guilty of it just because I'm an adult. I'm not a student, so I'm looking at it through my own adult lens, through that instructional lens, through that educator lens. But one of the things that they went in making their selections, because I was asking them, well, how did you select? One was in computer science, the other student was in something else. Well, how did you come to select the courses you did, even as far as languages or computers or what have you? And they really gave me some insight as to, through a student lens, some of the things they were thinking about. And it was with great foresight that they were making those selections. I think we have to capitalize on some of that, and really, as we're planning, saying, okay, we certainly have our own desires, our own interests, our own ways that we want to do things, but is it meeting what the students are looking for too? The other fact of the matter when offering anything new is striving to ensure that students understand what the course is and what the opportunity provides them. If it's something they don't know about or don't understand, if they think it's something other than what it is, we have to do our work in making sure that's articulated. The beauty we have now from a written perspective is all 3 course guides, we develop those together. They're not separate guides. You don't have a separate guide for North, a separate guide for South, and a separate guide for East. What you do is, you actually do, but the content of it is all the same. So if you were to look on any given page, and Dr. Siri knows this, and our high school principals do, Dr. Martzoff, we've spent a lot of time standardizing the course catalog. So if you see a course listed at North, you're going to see the same one listed at South and East. Ultimately, it's the students who are going to vote for their feet for whatever courses they're taking. So we really need to make sure, again, that the eyes of the students and the eyes of the adults, in this case, the perspectives, the lenses are coming together.
Is it realistic to, because I hear this coming up more than once, to do a student survey, say, come September? Put an actual timeline on it so that way we can have those results sooner?
September's a good time. We actually thought about doing something before school lets out, both for staff, and staff includes teachers, but it also includes district and school administrators, because that voice also has to be part of this. September is a good time. We do not know if survey is the best option. Sometimes meeting with kids, focus groups. We're actually looking at what the best way is. Maybe it's a combination of both of those opportunities, because sometimes with surveys, the way the questions are interpreted, or if the context isn't there, it really influences how people answer, particularly kids. So September is a good time frame. That is, the fall is a good time frame in general, but we're really right now trying to determine the best method in which to gather the information, and it might be multiple methods.
Okay. I was leading you before with a question regarding transportation. I knew the answer, and Mr. Meyer will scold me, because if we were in the court of law, I'd be out of order here.
Out of order.
Leading the witness. I was going with that because you brought up another idea, and I'd actually already been envisioning something else that I see in my industry. Let's talk about the online training for a moment. There's challenges with that, and the biggest one that comes to me why I've never thought of ever proposing that into a school district is how do you prove that the student was sitting in front of the computer? There's technologies out there that do this. I've actually done some online trainings where I've been the instructor, and it's been amazing, where you see a grid of literally 100 participants, and the the analytics that are coming back from them can actually analyze if they're listening to you, they're tuning out, or they're completely disconnected. So it's amazing what you can do with that. And I'm assuming you're looking into these opportunities and these potentials. I mean, you brought it up in your presentation here, but let me throw a new idea out there. Maybe it's not so new, maybe you've thought about it, but I'm seeing in my industry the remote campus, especially in the house of worship side of the industry, where campuses are getting so large, but they still want to conduct it, that they're putting in satellites. Have we explored the possibility of doing something like that maybe in our high schools, where we literally have, one teacher that's, say, at North that has a classroom at South and a classroom at East that are all participating live?
Those are some of the things that have had some discussion. Those weren't further discussion. That's why this question is in here. It's interesting from a student perspective, and again, I go back only to some of the more informal conversations I referenced earlier. They're on the fence and almost leaning towards more of a face-to-face format. So again, it's trying to meet the students' needs. It's looking at online learning. Is it the best vehicle for that type of learning? Some learning lends itself to that, others maybe not so much so. The other thing that will come to no surprise to you and our colleagues here is New York State has a whole host of regulations around online classes and what we need to do as a school district if we're to offer those. So again, just like I said earlier, we have to look at all of that, but certainly some of the things you're talking about should be part of the conversation. Is this an option for us? If it is, where does it fit in? If not, why not? So I think you bring up very valid points, and it's trying to make sense of it along with all of the other considerations that we
There's
have.
certainly a lot of logistics behind it. I would envision it not so much online. I guess you could record it. I would still consider it to be like a two-way forum where all the classrooms, no matter where they're located,
More of a distance learning type
distance
of,
learning,
yeah.
correct, can still raise their hand and ask questions, and perhaps maybe even the instructor rotates between the schools. That way, there's always the face-to-face, maybe once a week or something like that. There's a lot of logistics
There's
around
online,
that. So
there's face-to-face, as we know, there's hybrid models that include both. There's distance learning, again, with all of the resources
I
available.
asked that question, as I said, because it seems unfortunate to some of our students, and I find no fault with the district. I mean, if the enrollment is low, we can't offer the course. I understand that. I mean, it goes along with my original wish that we could have a one-to-one for every student. It's never going to happen. I understand that. But if we could find ways to make that work, I would love to see at least once in a 4-year cycle that, a student has that opportunity to attend the class that's being offered at North that never comes to, say, East or something along those lines. So
I think you bring up some interesting points. I think it's definitely something that, certainly warrants discussion. I think, just like with anything, there are going to be complicating factors and other preferred options. Again, I think it's just laying everything out on the table. I don't know that we can make any promises about that kind of delivery system, but certainly conversations are always there.
Well, I asked you about the surveys in September, and it's kind of leading to my final question. Is it realistic that we could put an arbitrary timeline on this to say, let's pilot something, maybe not the formal program we want to do, but potentially pilot something for the 2019-2020 academic school year, which means by next spring it has to be in the course catalog?
I think that would be very ambitious and probably not feasible, because all of our courses, as new courses, are introduced through a process of a curriculum council. You're familiar with that because you receive the recommendations. That's a standard process that all of our approvals go through before they come to you for curriculum work the following year. So there would actually be no way to have the approval and the associated curriculum in place that early. Plus, I really go back to what I said earlier, and again, it's not to stall a timeline in any ways, but I don't believe it's in our best interest to initiate something without having the full complement of the research done and the information collected. I think then we're essentially neglecting all of our other information that we wish to collect, and I think the recommendation really has to come with the totality of the picture as articulated through those endeavors. And then I think for my thought is that what I would offer is being able to sit down at that point with Dr. Martzloff, the leadership team, and actually offering to you several options to be put into place for a following year. You have to have a curriculum, you have to have a plan, and I would be very uncomfortable about putting something out there for students that would not have those pieces in place.
I know it was ambitious. I had to try.
I know.
I do want to say thank you for this, for the survey, for the results, for even being ambitious with my own timeline. But I did hear you 2 years from now, so holding you to that one. Any other board's questions on this? Great, thank you very much. Wow, we're one more presentation here, the one we've all been waiting for. LOTE Part 2. No, the Capital Improvement Project. Dr. Martzloff, would you like to introduce us on this one?
Thank you, Mr. LeMay. I'm going to quickly review some aspects of a potential capital improvement project that we would like to potentially bring before the voters in December of 2018. Please know that I'm not looking for the board's endorsement this evening or a board vote on whether or not you want to go forward with this project. It is just to further update the board on where things stand as it relates to the project. So why are we talking about a capital project that focuses on some of our music space? First of all, the high school orchestra program has really grown at each of our high schools, and our high schools originally weren't designed to accommodate the space. So, for example, at Williamsville North, it opened actually in 1968, not 75. 75 was East High School, with 123 students in the music program when it opened. In the 2017-18 school year, there's 457 students in North High's program. There's just not enough classroom space for our high school students. Certainly improvements in technology have impacted music programming, such as acoustical treatments, and we need to look at that from, for example, the 2016-17 music program work group that spoke to that as a need in the district. There are also new standards available for music facilities. The project improvements address many of the National Association for Music Education's opportunity to learn standards for our music facilities. So project overview, we're looking at some major renovations for our high school and an expansion at the high school. The middle school, it would be more minor renovations with very limited construction. Both at the high school and middle school, we are looking to improve our auditoriums, both the sound system, the lights, and other things I'll talk more about in a moment. And then also roof replacements at Transit Middle School and Maple West Elementary School are part of this, an emergency generator at South, and a pool dehumidification unit at East High School. So some of the acoustical review of the music space obviously includes the auditoriums and sound systems where needed, and as well as the current high school and middle school music classrooms. And we also want to review the impact of the school's mechanical systems on music classrooms. So we'll have a professional consultant that's part of this, having conversations with our music staff members and reviewing the layout at each of their schools. So we had some music space input teams. This included the principal and 2 music teachers to represent their school. And then schools were also encouraged to have a larger music committee at their school that could be updated by the music space input teams so that everybody was on the same page in terms of what was happening and what was going forward. We asked them to develop a list of 5 project requests for their school, to communicate the design preference with the district project team, to provide input and answer consultants' questions, and then communicate the information back and get the input from their colleagues at the school level. So who is on the music space input team? This is just a list, and I won't read it all to you, of our 3 high schools and our 4 middle schools of who is a part of those teams. And then from the district side, Dr. Balin, Mr. Russo, who's our Fine and Performing Arts, Business Education, and Facts Instructional Specialist, who's our last remaining audience member this evening, just by chance. And Keith Langlotz, our Director of Facilities, and Mr. Matursky, our Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Management Services, along with all of our professional partners through Cadeni Architects, acoustical consultant, and campus construction management. So the timeline was to develop the project scope throughout the school year, and also develop a project financing plan leading to tonight, which is an initial project presentation. So I won't read all these steps to you, but essentially we went through a number of steps, getting input from folks on what's important and how we can make that work in a cost-effective manner, number one, and number two, in a manner that meets the needs of the students not only now, but into the future. So these are the steps. Read them at your leisure if you like, in your packet. And then it ended up with people sort of coming to some sense of consensus about what was going to be done at each school. So, for example, let's start with South High School. This is the existing auditorium and the existing music space, and we're looking to do new construction. That's the light purple area on the west side of the school. So currently there's a loop over here that goes around. Back here is the fields, athletic facilities. So we would be looking to expand on the west side of the building and to create a classroom space for orchestra, chorus, and band. And then the light blue is all areas we would like to renovate. We want to make those areas better for kids and bring them up to 21st century standards. So what does it include at South High School? An orchestra room of 2,600 square feet, choral room, band room, 4 practice rooms, 3 offices, and storage. And then in the auditorium, we want to replace the sound system, replace the theater stage lighting, basically put in a new sound booth in the back of the auditorium, restore the front of the stage, make acoustical improvements, and renovate the existing music classrooms. So here's what things would look like over at East High School. Again, this is our existing auditorium. This is a parking lot over here we sometimes park in. And so this would all be a renovated space, this blue color. And also the purple would be new construction. So you would have 2 classrooms constructed there, as well as additional support for musicals, plays, and things like that in the auditorium. So at East High School, it includes a chorus room of 1,602 square feet, 2,500 square foot orchestra room, 6 new practice rooms, 2 changing rooms for drama students, and 2 customized storage areas. And then you can see on the auditorium side, replacement of the stage rigging, new theater lighting that's LED, updates to the sound system. We need to relocate the sprinkler system in backstage area. I got to see this at the Service to Youth Awards. There's a very large pipe in the backstage area at East High School. So we need to do some things to change that. And then renovate, of course, the existing classroom space. What would it look like at North? So this is the existing auditorium here. Right now, this is where you would walk out and across to district office this way. Casey Middle School is over here. And we'd be looking, this purple area would be new construction that would take place and create new classrooms, along with a significant amount of renovation of the existing classroom space at North High School. So what would that include? A 3,200 square foot band room, 2,600 square foot orchestra room, new choral room, 3 offices and a storage room, and 2 unisex bathrooms that are ADA accessible. And then in the auditorium, we want to do a new stage floor, renovate the front of the stage, do a sound system and acoustical upgrades, and then of course renovate all the current space. And part of that space will actually be for occupational and physical therapy, as they need additional space as well. At the middle schools, I won't go through all of the exact specifics of this, but we're looking to make moderate modifications of the existing music space at all of our middle schools, Transit, Casey, Mill, and Heim. And these are all slightly different at each school. You will notice on here the infill pool with mechanical improvements at Mill Middle and Heim Middle. We heard last time at the board meeting that there might be some reluctance to do that. So one of the things I'll ask Dr. Balin to do is to collect our current use at middle, and high middle pools in terms of the physical education use and the community use, and to have discussions with folks there of other opportunities that would not include filling in those pools. So project costs, all the additions and renovations are almost $24 million. Additional music middle school renovations are a little over $5 million. 2 roofs are $7 million in total for 2 roofs. And then some smaller items that I mentioned earlier, adding up to a project cost of $36,659,930. Tom has agreed to write a check for that amount and pay for the full amount once it's approved. But all kidding aside, basically we need to issue debt in the amount of $22.4 million, utilize some capital reserve from 2007 and 2014, and then have a yearly capital outlay that's currently already in our budget of about $1.56 million for 2020-21 and 21-22 to reach that total, which means since there's no change to the general fund, there would be no tax increase asked of our community to complete this project. So we would be able to do this work and hopefully in a timely manner and not have any tax increase. So what are the next steps? You have seen the proposition so far. We'll continue to develop the details. We would have a presentation scheduled for September with a follow-up in October for the Board of Education to authorize a bond proposition vote to take place in December of 2018. And I want to say thank you specifically to Mr. Russo, to Dr. Balin, and to Mr. Matursky for all of their tremendous work on leadership and talking to a lot of people. And it's very difficult to be able to put something together of this magnitude with people who have very specific things they'd like to see added and enhanced, and do that in a cost-effective manner. And I appreciate all of you doing that and leading that charge. Thank you very much. Questions from the board? Dr. McCleary.
Just one that's not really about the proposition itself, but in terms of constructions. Is all of this massive work being considered for only during the summer, or would it be carried on inside the buildings during the school day?
If it was inside the buildings, we would most likely do it during second shift.
Okay.
Their kids leave. If it is construction outside the building, there could be construction going on during the school day, or even during the fall, perhaps even winter and into the spring.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Beeger?
Thank you for all, this is very detailed. I have a question about debt issuance authority, and I would just like some clarification about that. I understand how it works, taking money from capital reserves to finance a project in this way. When we say that we're going to issue debt in this amount, what exactly does that mean? Is this money we have to pay back? Can you explain that a little clearer for me to understand?
Yeah, that would be in a future presentation. We will go through all of that with you. What essentially means is we need to borrow $22.4 million. And in doing so, you have to pay that back generally over a 15-year period. So in order to do that, you need money in your budget to pay back the debt every year for 15 years. So what we do is in Williamsville is we have a level debt service plan where we have a certain amount of money each year that's in the budget that has remained constant since 1996 to pay back debt such as this. Once debt is paid off by the district, then we're able to take on new debt. So one of the reasons we're able to turn around and do a project like this is because we did such a good job, and Mr. Matursky did such a nice job of making sure we got good numbers from our contractors and we're able to complete the project within the budget that was allocated and planned. So therefore, we would borrow this money, but it's already built into the budget to pay the money back. And then on top of that, once the final cost reports are submitted to the State Education Department, we then start to receive what's called building aid for 15 years. Most districts use that building aid to pay for the increase in their general fund budget to pay for a project to take place in their district. We don't do that in Williamsville because we maintain the same level of debt payments, if you will, year over year within the budget. So therefore, that's helpful to us because we can use that building aid from New York State to support our program needs, our class sizes, all the things we want to do to help support students across the district.
Okay, thanks.
Other board questions? Mrs. Van Cise?
Just to touch on, I know this discussion is going to come up, as it already has. I saw the 2 middle schools with the pool closings. So I'm happy to hear that, you will research, because I think that's what we're going to need to do. There's already been much talk about it. There was a news article, so I think as long as we're able to present or have the facts, I love knowing that we're going to contact both middle schools in regards to, is the pool being utilized, cost effective, all of those items, because as long as we're able to have those pros and cons presented to the community, it will just help to understand our motives and the reasoning behind it, and further discussion before I think it completely blows up, because I know some people already have been very passionate one way or the other. So just as long as we're going to be proactive with presenting that information.
We will be, and I agree.
Mrs. Leatherborough.
Just on that, I appreciate that you're going to speak with them about the usage. I am more interested in some data, if it's available, regarding swim instruction. And I don't even know if this is something they collect, but if they do some type of assessment at the beginning of a swim unit and then a post-assessment at the end of a swim unit, I'm curious to know, are we really teaching children how to swim as part of our swim instruction? And that would be one of my questions.
Question on North. The diagram there shows, is that going next to the AIM building? The new build out? Is that where that's, am I envisioning that correctly?
Well, the only way I can really point to this is through this very powerful laser pointer.
for me.
The AIM building is essentially right about here.
Okay.
Okay. And so there would still be some space. This is our facilities garage, so we still need people to be able to get in and out of here. But it would come out towards district office in this new construction area.
Can you go also back over to South for a second? Because I was confused on South. Excuse me. The purple, am I misunderstanding this? The purple is new build? Because I thought where the current, and again, I don't have a laser pointer, but I know some of that is existing where they already have the chorus room and stuff like that. I'm assuming this is all on the back side, so that little bump out there that's curved is part of the original building that's there today, where it says instructional storage, I think is what it's going to be turned into.
This is what caught me too. You have to think about this. This little curved area,
yeah,
there's a bump out that looks like that at the building, okay?
Right.
But the sidewalk is like close to it, okay? This is just shaped like this because we're going to have ramps, because the ground level of the new build is lower than existing footprint of the building, okay?
Okay.
So this bump out actually kind of comes like this, if that makes sense.
Okay.
All right? I'm trying to hold
So
the laser pointers.
where's the existing bump out of the building right now? Is that part that's blue right now?
Oh, that's what I'm trying to do.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Kinda come
I
out
understand
like
now. Okay.
So, because when I originally saw this, I said, "Oh my goodness, we're going to be in the middle of our new parking lot."
Exactly where I
bumping
was
out
going.
South
Yep.
High School, and Mr. Matursky said, "No, you got to think about it's already bumped out like this. It's going to be kind of just reconfiguring that space and adding new space and walls and things of that nature."
Okay.
So, is it new build? Yes, but it's also taking some of the existing footprint.
Thank you. That makes a lot more sense now. I do want to thank Mr. Matursky for footing the bill for all of this. Thank you again very much. The board is very appreciative for that. Last question. If the voters approve this, what is our projected timeline for completion? And I know that's always the difficult question to answer, but
I think you vote on it in December of 2018, and hopefully by the end of January 2019, it's complete. I mean, if all goes well and we get our bids in on time, right, Mr. Matursky? Or no, you're probably looking at 2021 for completion, or 22, because the state is reviewing all the capital project submissions, and they're really moving slowly. And it's all based on finances. They don't want to start that 15-year payback cycle. They want to delay that as long as they can. So the more they delay approving our community-approved project, the longer it takes them before they have to pay the money to districts. So we're probably looking at 2021 if you're ambitious, 2022 if you listen to the construction managers and the architects too much, perhaps. But somewhere in 2021, 22 timeframe, we will look to complete the work.
to kind of put it in relevance, how long did the state take to approve the capital project for the fields? Was it almost a year?
No, it was shorter than that. We were approved by the voters in May 2015. Mr. Matursky, when did the state allow us to start going out to?
There was 2 approvals. The first field, North High School, was sent in separately, so we got approval for that in about 8 to 9 months. And we were able to do that due to our ability to separate some of the pieces in it, and it was considered more of an architectural design. These, though, have mechanical issues that need to be done, so therefore it has to go through a full review, and that's why it'll be a lengthier process.
The other thing the State Education Department is doing is they are contracting out for their reviews of projects. So they used to do it internally. Now they're hiring different firms to do that, and that's also playing a role in slowing things down.
So 8 to 9 months was not a full review. So we realistically are looking at a year plus before we can even break ground. So probably spring of 2020-ish.
I think we can move faster than that. I think you underestimate Mr. Matursky's
his pull.
But we'll see. Obviously, we want to do it the right way. We want to do it safe, and we don't want to interrupt instruction wherever possible. So those will be some of the factors as well to consider in the timeline.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Moving on, the district's goals year-end report. Dr. Martzloff, do you have anything to share there?
No, I'm happy to answer any questions. The year-end goal report is in your packet. And take any questions or comments, concerns?
Seeing none, moving on to the discipline report for 2017-2018. Any comments on that? Dr. Martzloff or from the board members? Mrs. Leatherbarrow, please.
Thank you for these numbers. I realize it's possible that something like this wasn't asked for in the past. I just want to ask, like, in the future, if there could be more of a breakdown. When I look at something like this, I kind of see it as a piece of data, not really a complete report. Kind of makes me think of like the grade 3 through 8 assessment data. It's like, okay, so what do I do with this? I think it's really important for us to have these conversations. Just as you see mental health being discussed in the news, it's important for us to have honest conversations about behaviors in our schools because it helps us as a board to decide where to appropriate resources. I, in the future, would be interested in short-term versus long-term suspension data over periods of time at each school. That way we can sort of look at trends to see, is there some areas of, are there trends that we're noticing, or is there something that is standing out? And also, we're aware that school districts are required to make reports regarding the VADAR incidents, but those things aren't often shared with the board. And it's important for people to know what's happening in schools so that you're not just getting reports from your high school students, but that you're getting accurate information. But thank you for this as a preliminary piece of information.
Yeah, just to comment, Mrs. Leatherbarrow, if we may, there is just a very large number of different categories. And so let's just say you had 2 students get into a fight in school. Some would categorize it as a fight, others as a student conflict, other as harassment with physical aggression. There's all different kinds of categories that we need to kind of boil down for ourselves as a district so we can make those year-over-year comparisons as you suggest, because what you're looking for is trends and changes and what's happening at North High School, for example, in terms of their number of disciplinary referrals from one year to another. Are they seeing an uptick in out-of-school suspensions or long-term suspensions, or what is it that's going on there so that we can dig deeper and figure out what's at the root cause? I think that makes a lot of sense, and we will be looking to do that for future reports.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Thank you for the report. I think it would be beneficial for you all to get information on gender and race of persons that are suspended, long-term, short-term, internal, external, just to get a gauge on the disproportionality that I spoke of earlier, because it is real. And I think that once you see the percentage of Black and brown students in our district compared to the percentage of Black and brown students being suspended or expelled, it will bring light to the conversation, a necessary conversation that you all need to have at this table. And I'm sorry that I won't be a part of it, but you all need to have it because I'll be watching.
Other questions? I'd agree not only with that, but I'd be curious to see, especially at the elementary school, non-English speaking students, what proportion of that could be a factor here as well. Would someone like to move the first reading and adoption of the following revised policies? Policy 5660, meal charging and prohibition against meal shaming. 7242, military recruiters' access to secondary school students and information on students. 7512, students' physicals. And finally, 7513, administration of medication. Mrs. Leatherbarrow, is there a second? Mrs. Van Cise, any discussion? Mrs. Leatherbarrow.
One quick thing. On the policy for military recruiters and institutions of higher education, it says there's an annual notification and opt-out opportunities. The district will annually notify parents of a secondary student of the opportunity to submit a written request to opt out of disclosure of the student's name, blah, 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 blah. How is that done?
It's done in our school calendar.
I thought that's where it was done. So my second question would be then, if you, what is a good time as a parent for you to do that? If your child's already in high school, it's probably too late, because we're getting a college thing for college we don't want to go to pretty much every day of the week. So what grade level would be appropriate to opt out your child from receiving all that stuff?
From receiving information from colleges?
Yeah, isn't that institutions of higher education? Isn't that part of it?
I don't.
Or does this opt out not really work for that?
I don't know the answer to that. We'd have to do some further research. But in terms of anytime a parent wants to opt their child out of that, they certainly could do so, and I would recommend it as their child enters high school.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. McClary?
I just have a quick question on the meal charging, the first policy. And I don't need a detailed explanation, but when, in any level, when students go through the lunch area, we're talking about not pointing out specific students and so forth and so on. So when students go through the line, for example, does every single student present some sort of lunch card, which, you know, may show as paying nothing, or somebody else is paying for a lunch and so forth, but they all look the same when they go through the line? Or I'm not...
You want to comment on that?
Yeah, there's really two forms of payment. Is if you use the NutriKids application and you have a number assigned, and the other would be cash.
Okay, I guess I did not ask my question correctly. It's just when we're talking about how you don't want to shame students of not paying for a lunch or not being able to get a lunch and so forth, I guess I'm asking, is that as they're going through the lines, does the process look the same for each student, so that theoretically you couldn't, some other student couldn't say, this kid this or that kid that?
They would go through the line as normal. The cashier would be the one, so there's no differences as any student goes through the line.
That's my question.
Yes.
I would like to say I was very pleased to see this policy, because, and I love that the lunch monitors have in-services and are being trained, but this policy really ensures that all students are being treated actually quite above and beyond and very fair. My daughter, I cannot believe it, I just received another bill. And I was like, honest to goodness, I just got another $10 bill. But I give her a lunch every day. And I said, didn't the lunch monitor tell you that you were down? She said they didn't say anything. Then I read the policy. They're not going to say anything. They have been trained. I like that it's not about calling any student out. I like that I now know, too, that you can write a letter and say, I do not want, my child is not allowed to put anything on. So I think that that's wonderful, because that was a concern. And just a question about this. So I realized that we take a large hit, or we're in debt because a lot of families might not pay. And I see that there's an action plan that the district will reach out after several occurrences. So is that the plan, and that's the follow-up, and sometimes it might just not be all the way through because we can't enforce that someone does pay?
Yeah, that's correct. At the end of the school year, we are still receiving legislation from New York on how they interpret this, but the charge is if we cannot collect, then the program itself will write off the dollar amounts. However, the legislation is saying that there's a potential that the general fund may need to reimburse the child nutrition fund for the write-off amount. But that's not completely 100% yet. We're still waiting for more clarification from New York State Education Department on that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, would someone like to make a motion to would someone like to move to table the motion for a second reading and adoption of the July 2nd, 2018 organization meeting? Mrs. Van Cise, a second. Mrs. Beeger, discussion, all in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Dr. McClary, we're tabling it so we can bring it back to vote on it next month. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the reserve funding as presented? Mrs. Van Cise, is there a second? Mrs. Beeger, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the tax certiorari funding as presented? Mrs. Beeger, is there a second? Mrs. Van Cise, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the property tax settlements as presented? Mrs. Leatherbarrow, thank you. Is there a second? Dr. Bernader, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. If you have any liaison or conference reports, please send them to Mrs. Carey. Does anyone need any coverage for any upcoming meetings, as there's still a few left on the agenda? Great. Are there any legislative matters that anyone would like to discuss this evening? There are no curriculum matters to discuss this month. Moving on to personnel, would someone like to make a motion to approve the resolution for summer hiring as presented? Dr. McClary, is there a second? Mrs. Leatherbarrow, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the funding for the agreement between the Superintendent of Schools and the Williamsville Supervisors and Computer Technicians Association, better known as the WSCTA? Mrs. Beeger, is there a second? Mrs. Van Cise, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the funding for the agreement between the Superintendent of Schools and the Williamsville Coordinators Association, or the WCA? Dr. Bernader, thank you. Second? Mr. Meyer, was that a second? Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimously passes. Dr. Martzoff, can you give us the update on the facilities improvement plan, please?
Yes, you heard the information on the music project earlier this evening, and we will be continuing with work across the district this coming summer.
Questions or comments? Would someone like to make a motion to resolve to approve the resolution for authority to approve change orders as presented? That's a tongue twister. Anyone? Mrs. Leatherbarrow, thank you. Is there a second? And Mr. Meyer, I saw that hand first. Discussion. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Would someone like to make a motion to resolve to approve the State Environmental Quality Review Assessment, or the SEQR, for the Smart School Bond Project as presented? Mr. Meyer, second. Mrs. Van Cise, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Would someone like to make a motion to resolve to approve the temporary and permanent easement agreement as presented? Mrs. Van Cise, thank you. A second. Mr. Meyer, appreciate it. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Would someone like to make a motion to resolve to approve the district technology plan as presented? Mr. Meyer, is there a second? Mrs. Van Cise, is there any discussion or questions? Mrs. Leatherbarrow.
I read through the plan. I just noticed there isn't anything in there about changes to the one-to-one device program or any mention of piloting devices in the high school. I don't know if that was left out intentionally or just that we're more voting on goals and things like that. But is there any updates on that I should be aware of before voting on this?
Dr. Balin, would you like to comment on that, please?
Most of what the plan calls for is really about the goal areas. As we shared in our presentation, we are planning to carry on further discussion with regard to any possible refinements or changes. This plan would not include details of that nature. That's in our next steps. This is a very set forward format from New York State, of which we follow the template So that's essentially what we're called to complete in terms of the plan.
Thank you. That makes sense now. Thank you.
Mrs. Beeger?
Assuming this plan is then approved, as those next steps are determined, and I noticed that it says adjustments are made on an ongoing basis, I assume that's something that would be communicated to us as we go through reports or information sharing. Great, thank you so much.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? This is a 3-year plan that starts over here with 2018 through 2021. So we're at the beginning of this plan, right? Okay. Is there any highlights, major changes from the past plan that's different in this plan that we can point out, highlight?
The plan format and content is very similar. What we did is we worked through our stakeholder groups and presenting the plan to our district technology committee, our principals. As you know, we made it available via WITS to our families. So any of the refinements, they weren't major in scope, I would say. The template is very similar to what we saw before. There were wording changes. We did try to simplify some of the language. In some cases, some of the goals were made more clear. The language was more precise, but essentially the topical areas, if you will, or the areas of focus remain pretty consistent. So things like readiness, the infrastructure, the curricular components, all of the pieces that we spoke to when we presented, they're very similar to what we've had in the past, but we updated and refined the language and also looked at some of the action steps that we've taken, and then also ones that we're planning to take over the next couple of years. But as you can see from those areas, they're very broad in nature, so they're really not calling for the level of detail when it comes down to the granular level of implementation. It's really more broad, a broad picture of where you're going and some of the actions that you would take, but it's not designed to be an action plan per se. Keep in mind there's also the 1-year survey that we had to fill out, so that has to interface with what you see here, and also the Smart Bond piece. So it's a lot of different sort of moving parts under one large umbrella, which would not include the granular level of information that would take place.
Am I correct to also assume that if anybody wants more technical plan or to get more details, they can refer back to the presentation we had a month or so ago?
That's correct.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Anything to add to the Environmental Committee Annual Report, Dr. Martzloff?
No, nothing at this time, just a number of recycling efforts underway and planned for the future, and I thank the members of the committee for their work.
Mrs. Beeger?
May I just ask a quick question about that?
Sure.
I noticed that different recycling opportunities are starting to become available at different schools. How is that communicated to the schools, that is an effort that's being explored? I guess the reason I asked is that I was just at a PTA meeting where one of the requests came up that they were interested in exploring recycling as an initiative, and then I saw in the plan that that's listed as a plan for the school, which is great. They'll be thrilled. But I just wondered how this information is then communicated back to schools so they're aware.
Mr. Machersky, you want to comment on that as one of the leaders of the committee?
Sure. Yeah, we, as a committee, we work back to the principals, and the principals normally go back. We usually have a principal from each level on our committee, and so they take the information back to their levels, and then we also have an update at a point in the year at our K-12 principals meeting where we share many of the initiatives. In the past, we also have sent out emails to everyone regarding specific new programs that might be out there. So that's the type of communication process we have followed.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Great, thank you. Dr. Martzloff, anything to add to the annual notification of compliance and performance results for students with disabilities?
No, I think we had very favorable indicators, and thank you for Dr. Siri for putting this together, and as well as the background information. That's quite extensive. That's included as part of this item.
Mrs. Van Cise, please.
So I will say this report is very, very positive. I think the district is meeting and has met many of the state targets, so that is very impressive to see. I actually am really happy to see also that the disproportionality, the discrepancy, that we are meeting the state target. So there is no red flag or ding going on there. So that I think is very, very positive. The only area I see that I know many districts are struggling with is least restrictive environment. Could I just ask, do you know I know you know, the percentage of students currently in alternative assessment? Do you know the percentage?
Don't know the current percentage. We are very low. We've not had to ask for, you can ask for an extension of the cap. We've not ever had to ask for that extension to the cap. The one piece I also wanted to share with regard to the least restrictive, one of the unintended consequences of our change to the middle school structure with the length of our periods. If you think about that in terms of 15-to-1 instruction, and you lengthen the amount of time, that also impacts the 80%.
Thank you, but I think this is a great reflection.
Okay. Does anyone have a request or matter to discuss under the committee of the whole? With the immense audience that we have, we will now conduct our second public expression. The same rules are outlined in our first public expression do apply. I do ask community members, single form, please. Come to the podium, sign in, and announce your name. Are there any other correspondences to discuss? Dr. McClary.
I guess I want to, go back for just a second under public expression.
Please.
Just refresh my memory. When we added the second public expression, did we add that as a permanent thing or something that we were going to revisit after several months? Because I think in my 10 o'clock memory, that we've had maybe one person in all the times that we've now had a second public expression actually speak during it. So I'm just wondering if we're going to continue to have it.
Actually, I don't think that's accurate. I think we've
Okay.
had a number of people speak during the second slot. Maybe not at every meeting, but I've certainly can recall at least 3. But we can go back and check.
Okay.
I do think your request, if I go back and look at the minutes, I do think it was to pilot the program to the end of the year. I'm vague. I'm not sure on that.
Okay.
I know there was discussion of why not just make it permanent, but I don't believe the board actually did vote on making it permanent. So I guess we should probably make a note to vote on that at the reorg meeting next month.
Okay.
Yeah, Mrs. Carey, would you please note that we need to vote on that next month to make it a permanent? Thank you.
Noted.
Any correspondences? I will say that the board did receive a thank you letter from Dr. Martzloff's daughter here for the gift that we sent her due to an illness, but that's the only correspondence I know of. Thank you. Someone like to make a motion to meet in executive session to discuss employment matters relating to a particular person or persons, collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law, and current litigation. Dr. McClary, is there a second? Mrs. Beeger, thank you. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
It was so natural.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, he's gonna.
I did. It wasn't.
Would someone like to make a motion to return to public session? Dr. Van Ader, is there a second? Mr. Meyer, I see that. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Our next board meeting will be held on Monday, July the 2nd, 2018 at 7 p.m. right here in district offices. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn the regular board meeting? Mrs. Vasquez. Is there a second? Dr. Venator, you want to second it? All in favor?
One votes no.
All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Good night.